My head has just been stirring and stirring. I barely sleep anymore, and most nights I am searching the internet and taking notes. My most important tool is my notebook. I usually destroy them after every interrogation. I don't hand over notes, the notes are mine. If I keep notes because they are still relevant to some other job I am working. This won't be a job this time, no payment, no reward. I just want to find the Dark Master and hurt him. Again and again. I think I have to share this, so you can understand, so you can really understand the horror of it all. First, no, the girl was not the only one consumed that night. I counted at least 20 bodies, men, women and children of all ages and ethnicities laid out on tables that night. In a kind of lull. Each table was seated with 3 to 5 guests. I never got much closer than a balcony that allowed me to view the dining area below. I knew being discovered would be the end of me, so I was very in and out about the whole thing. I had planned to snatch up the girl and make a run for it. That was not to be. By day, they looked just like you and me. At that feast though, they were very different. Their faces were like those of leeches. A hole full of teeth and writhing black tongues. First they drained their victim, and then consumed them, flesh, bones, hair and all. When they would transform, their mouth and jaw would sort of roll away, a bit like a reversible sock, revealing their true face. I've seen many horror movies, but to actually see real horror unraveled my entire concept of reality. I still haven't shaken it. I had consigned myself to doing nothing. What could I do? I've already explained what I was up against. These things were everywhere, in every facet of society. Everyone was starting to notice my lack of sleep. I was barking at my wife and child over the slightest thing, and I had become aggressively prejudiced against inanimate objects. Namely my laptop, which I smashed to pieces when it spent just a little too long on the boot-up screen. It wasn't just due to my overdue visit to the land of Nod either. I really wanted to get back at these fucking things, but how do you fight an enemy that's everywhere and indistinguishable from anyone else? I saw a few faces, but every one of them had a security detail. No way I was going to get to one of them by myself. If I hadn't discovered Pat's notes, I think I would have done nothing, but I did find his notes, and this compelled me to do something. I had kept Pat's letter to his daughter in the locket. They needed someone to remember them. If I was beginning to understand their world correctly, there was no one to miss them. They only had each other and ultimately died alone. I told you, I have drank many tears, but I am not without feeling. I am one of those that numbs my pain with drink. Strong drink. A bit of Everclear and pineapple juice is just a cure I need sometimes. It wasn't strong enough though, to wash the taint of horror from my eyes. Those things shooing away at them, and to think, oh God, to think they were still alive. Still alive. They were still alive. I jumped from my chair, spilling my glass all over the desk, along with Pat's letter. Esther, my wife, rushed, making a shushing sound. I just got him to sleep, hon. She saw the mess I made, and her eyes shifted from agitation to concern. What happened, babe? She grabbed up a towel from the adjoining bathroom, and began dabbing at the sticky pineapple cocktail dripping from the table. Everclear, huh? Bad day. I know, because you only drink Everclear on a bad day. I stared at the floor, numb outside, but my spirit felt as if it had been beaten with hammers. A girl died. She stopped and rose up to meet my face. She leaned in, and kissed me, and placed her forehead against mine. I'm sorry. She said, I know you. I know you did everything you could to stop it. I couldn't hold the tears back when she said that. I stopped the girl from being eaten by one monster, only for another to eat her instead. Worse yet, I had allowed myself to become a weapon in Mr. Ghost Arsenal. That son of a bitch. That son of a bitch. Sad, angry tears. Very sad, very angry tears rolled down my face, and my wife could not wipe them away fast enough. I crashed to the ground, and buried my head deep in my hands and pulled at my hair. I could still hear them chewing and gnawing. Esther patted and rubbed my back in an effort to calm me. Then her pats turned to a rapid tapping as she gasped and urged me to rise. Look. Is that blood? My sense of intrigue overwhelmed my sadness, and I sat up and looked at the table. Where the whiskey met the paper, blood-red liquid was running from it and across the table. Words. See them. Esther shouted excitedly. She stood up and carefully wiped away the excess liquid. Once her excitement passed, she paused and asked, "Is this for your work?" I nodded, "Yeah. And, this is dark stuff, babe. Very, very dark stuff. I would prefer you not know, not because I want to keep a secret from you, it's just you don't want me to be plagued by nightmares," she said, handing the letter to me. She flicked up her eyebrows and tilted her head, then smiled. "I know you. I know your heart. Thank you for understanding." I looked at the letter. Before it had a few sentences, but now it was littered with notes in blood red ink. "All right," she said, "bedtime for me. Don't be long, okay? My feet are really cold tonight." "Great." I laughed. "Cold feet. My favorite. You know you love it." She laughed and kissed me. "I love you," I said, and watched her sashay away through the door. Once she had bedded down, I grabbed a brush and touched up the rest of the letter and the envelope for good measure. Written all across the letter in this invisible ink was a treasure trove of information. He had a few addresses and phone numbers, symbols, and what I believed to have been some kind of incantation. Then there was the most important bit. Mongorgo equals Dark Master. I had the fucker's name. I'm sure he wouldn't appear in any address search, but I knew people. Knowing people can be a kind of superpower if used correctly, and I wielded my contact list like a sword when I needed to. I yawned. The Ambien I popped earlier was kicking in. I hadn't planned on finding these notes. I resigned to go warm my poor wife's feet and start ringing phones in the morning. The night was uneventful, and I slept well into the morning. It was almost noon by the time I got up. I was still a bit groggy. My wife had already gone to work and my son was at school. Hot coffee and note awaited me in the kitchen. "I love you." Made coffee. I really don't deserve her. I drank my coffee and started ringing phones. My first call was to an old friend of mine with a certain intelligence agency. He was the one who had referred my services to Mr. Ghost. He might also know where Mr. Ghost could be found. I rang my friend's phone and he answered promptly. "Go for David," he answered using his codename. "David, thank you for taking the time. I need a physical location for Mr. Ghost. I can trade for it." Fresh intel was currency to him. I knew a few things he might like to know, about people and places and things. People sometimes try to avoid answering the question, when they are being interrogated, by offering up other juicy information instead. They'll snitch out everybody they work with sometimes. Like I said, I take a lot of notes. Would have done it as a favor," he said. I could almost hear his smirk. "How about that yellow 9 case? London Bridge?" he asked. David had been after me for that one for a while. It was some of my most valuable intel regarding a blood diamond for crack scheme in Miami. That guy told me a lot of interesting things. People talk a lot more and faster when they realize they are about to be impaled on an iron rod. Vladimir Drakul was truly a master of his craft. Tie men around a pole, seat them on a sharpened spike, and wait for them to lose their grip. Very handy when you are in a hurry to get info. Bit of a gamble though, as I learned in the Miami. He lost his grip before I could kick the spike down. Whatever, he murdered and tortured people for drug lords. Not a single tear shed. "Location first, then I'll fax you the name of Toro's overboss." Good trade. David was probably salivating right now. "You really know?" He seemed doubtful. "Oh yeah," he shouted, "please. I'll tell you anything." And started naming names. I replied and then tapped the phone impatiently. "I wouldn't have called you unless this was urgent." "We got a deal, David." "Yeah. Deal. This is hard copy only level info, so I'll meet you downtown at the Broken Spoke, the coffee place. You know it. 6 p.m. I'll be there for 10 minutes, then I'm gone and the hard copy goes with me." "Yeah, I know it. I'll be there. Get me all you got on this Pat fella too." I told him all I knew of Pat and he agreed. I had some hours to kill, so I did a drive around the mansion, where that darkest of dinners had been served. The gates were closed, and 2 giant men stuffed into tiny suits were guarding the gates. "Mongorgo, I'm coming for you." I drove away, casually. It wasn't time to strike yet. Mr. Ghost used me, and now I was going to use him. Undoubtedly, this Mongorgo and Mr. Ghost were not friends. There was some kind of competition in the world of monsters and they were competitors. I wasn't sure how yet, but I was going to use that to my advantage. I got up the gym for a while, to work off some of the anger I was feeling. I couldn't afford to lose my cool just yet. I had to stay focused, create a plan and follow through. I couldn't create that plan without information, though, and try as I might to stay busy. 6 p.m. seemed very far away. It did come, though, and when I pulled into the broken spoke, David was already waiting by his car. Prompt. "You're a true professional, Mr. Alistair." David smiled and led us to a table in the back. After we were seated, he handed a menu. Opening, I saw he had slayed the documents inside. "You've got good hands," I said. "Didn't see that at all." "Part of our training," he said. "I expect a fax in my office by morning." The waiter sat coffee and creamer in front of us. I didn't know it, but I would soon meet her again. "You'll have it," I assured him as I gazed over the papers in front of me. Written on one of them was the address I was looking for, along with Pat's last address, list of assets, criminal record, FBI file, and the name of his daughter Asya. I feel my emotions stir once again toward deep sadness, and drank a bit of coffee to help push them down into my stomach. "Do you know anyone that's an expert in the occult? Can you refer me? This Pat guy was into some seriously dark shit, and I could use some help unraveling it." "Sure. I know a guy. A woman actually. I'll have her call you." He sipped from his coffee and then leaned in close and said in a low voice, "That guy. Mr. Goes. He's VIP. He has friends in very high places." I'm not surprised. I stared into my coffee a moment. "Just be careful, eh? You're in dangerous waters. Very dangerous." I bobbled my head in agreement. "You have no idea." We finished our coffees and I returned home to do a deep dive on the docks. Pat's address was in the kind of neighborhood you don't visit after dark. I'd intended to wait until morning to check things out there. I headed home and waited for my phone to ring. My wife and son were at a school function, a bake sale. They wouldn't be home for a couple of hours, so I made use of the kitchen table and spread the papers out. I had only been studying them for 10 minutes or so, when I heard a knock at the door. I snatched up a pistol I kept hidden in a panel behind the thermostat, and peeked through the curtains onto the porch. It was the waitress from the restaurant. "Who is it?" I asked in a neighborly voice. As she stood back from the peephole, and fixed her shirt and hair, then politely said, "I'm Sheila. I was Pat's friend. I followed you. We met at the restaurant." I opened the door, and pulled her in. I pushed her over to the couch, and held my pistol at my side. "What do you know about Pat?" I asked in a loud and unspoken threat to gleam across my eyes. I looked for any sign that she might be a monster in human guise. "You said Pat was into dark stuff. I thought, just maybe you meant my Pat. I just want to find him." She kept her eyes, now watering, fixated on the gun. She was no threat. I put it behind my back from her sight. Tell her, or let her go on with false hopes. I wasn't much for torturing the innocent. Not knowing was a torture in its own right. Not knowing if your loved ones will ever come home. I searched for softer words, but couldn't find them. "He's dead. He died. I'm sorry." She didn't sob as I expected she might. She cried without making a noise. "How?" she asked. "How did he die? Is Asya dead too?" "Asya," I repeated as if by some magic. Speaking her name would roll back all the horror. The horror remained there, like tar smeared across my mind, a permanent stain. "Yes." Asya. Sheila waited my response. She still had hope, and I had to be the one to snuff it out. I hated myself for it. "She is also dead. I can't express how I started in, trying to explain how much I empathize with her, but my words were drowned out by her sobbing. "Not Asya. Not little Asya. What did he do?" She bawled and cursed Pat's name again and again. I let her have her cry. It was all she had left. Sheila eventually fell quiet and sat on my couch staring through me at the wall. "It would help me if you could tell me about Pat." I put my pistol away and poured us both a pineapple cocktail. Of Verclear and pineapple. I told her, "It will help calm your nerves." She took it and held it but did not drink. She nodded quietly to herself, and then finally focused her eyes on me. "Pat used to be a sweet guy, you know. Then he got this job driving for this rich guy. I hardly saw him after that." "Are you his girlfriend? Wife?" I asked. I reached up to my breast pocket and realized I had no notebook. "I was his live-in sitter until a few weeks ago. He called me and said someone had taken Asya and to get out of the house." "Are you a cop or something like that?" she asked. "No, not a cop. I'm just looking for some payback. For Asya. For Pat." I swallowed down my cocktail and poured another as she was taking her first drink. How did they die? She joined me in the kitchen and marveled at my family photos. You have a little boy. I want a little boy one day. You don't want to know. It was a bad death for both of them, though a very bad death, and Mongorgo is their killer. When I find him, he will beg for death. This seemed to please her. Can I do him? Can I be the one that kills him? Can you take me to Pat's house? Can I have a look around? You didn't answer my question. Sheila held her drink to her lips and remained silent. Sure. You can do the final deed. I lied. Most people think they could kill their worst enemy, but you'd be surprised how many can't pull the trigger when the time comes, and that can get you killed. If you were going to hunt a killer, then you bring bona fide killers. Besides, I wouldn't expect her mind would be ready for the kind terrors that awaited me, nor would I want anyone else to be exposed to the realities of this living nightmare. Sure. I'll give you a tour. The house was not what I expected. It was quite nice despite being in the midst of an early dystopian sprawl. A 3-bedroom, 2-bath with a basement and an adjoining 2-car garage. Pat's house was nicer than my house. I don't even have a garage. Sheila took me straight away to the garage, which was decorated with maps, notes, photographs, strings and pins. The floor and ceiling were covered in occult symbols and runes. Just as I began to ponder their meaning, my phone chimed. It was my anchor to the line. Black one, I replied. I am a new contact. I have a referral from David. You need an expert on the occult. The voice indicated age. That's correct. What is your ID? I asked, preparing my notebook. Joan, as in Joan of Arc. She said somewhat proudly. Remember Joan? Biscuits and gravy. Remembered. How can I help? Joan asked. She spoke as if someone who had just been waiting for a field day, eager to get out of the office. I'm going to send you GPS over the E-line. Can you meet me here in a half hour? I asked. That shouldn't be a problem. She replied. That told me she probably worked with David at the local field office just outside town. We had nothing to do but wait it out, and having seen with my own eyes that monsters were real, I wasn't meddling with anything occult, not until Joan gave it a once-over. I warned Sheila to the very same, I wouldn't touch anything in here. I noted that there were also explosives and ammunition galore. There was also an open notebook with a list of names and ages. Some of them were crossed off, a few were circled, and others had stars. The ages ranged from 10 to 90. What the hell was he up to? I took pictures of everything. Joan arrived in just under 28 minutes. She was an older lady in her mid-50s. She dressed office casual, and she hid her face behind large eyeglasses. Joan was carrying a large doctor's bag, and she had a odd-looking device hung around her neck. She approached the door and she greeted us with an all-too-excited handshake. Show me what you got. Poltergeist. Possession. Oh. The cursed artifact. Those are always fun. She marveled at the house and added, very nice. This is far too new to be a haunting. Gotta be a cursed artifact. You think you found a deal at the Antiques Roadshow and then bam, bad luck all the time, or worms. It's in here. I pointed to the garage. I've seen occult stuff before, but nothing quite like this. She hustled into the garage, where Sheila was still carefully exploring. Here. Joan waved to Sheila and her eyes fell on the symbols. Holy this Vinkin. What exactly? I'm an interrogator, not an anthropologist. I quipped. They predate the Sumerians. They had a form of writing too. They mostly just used for bookkeeping, but then there is this. Joan explained and took the device from her neck. She went around poking it towards various objects, and it emitted a soft steady clicking sound. These are wards. Active 2 if my meter is working correctly. It's reading 0 cosmic. It never reads 0 cosmic. Joan used her free hand to thumb through a small pocket book, filled with symbols and translations. These are magic or something? Sheila asked, reading through the names in the notebook. In a sense. They are ancient scared geometries. More likely, the paint has some special properties or minerals blocking the cosmic band. Joan scraped some of the paint off the wall and into a small vial. I'm thirsty. Sheila said, anybody want anything? I'm fine. I said, and Joan indicated the same. Anyway, Joan opened her book and pointed to images of statues and strange beings. There is a lot we don't know about the Vinkins, like these statues. Some people think they represent some kind of alien, god or demon. My bet is on demon. I replied, pointing to the strange runes on the floor and ceiling. Just then, we heard a scream from the kitchen. We both rushed in and saw Sheila running toward us from the back porch area, just beyond the kitchen. "There's some kinda dead monster in there." She was visibly shaken. Joan and I went to the back porch, where we found a large, still open freezer, and inside was the upper torso of a monstrous creature. The head was like that of a leech. The mouth was a gaping round hole full of teeth, the tongue appeared to have a needle-like bone at the tip. A human face hung loosely from the base of its neck like some kind of flesh hootie. An organ of some time, attached to specialized muscles around its face and crown. I had seen one of these before, at the party. "It's one of them," I said. "This is what they are." As Joan prepared her camera, she was knocked to the ground by the force of the back door being kicked in. Two of the monsters with their teeth and tongues bared rushed through. One stuck long enough to shoot its barbed tongue into Joan's heart. I could see the blood being sucked up the tube-like tongue. The other rushed Sheila and sank all of its teeth into her face. It shook vigorously, and when it let go, she had no face. She crashed to the ground. I had finally managed to pull my pistol, a .45 caliber cross loaded with hollow points and full metal jacket. I put half a clip in one and half a clip into the other, as I backpedaled into the kitchen and the garages. Each shot that connected stunned them only a couple of seconds, but it bought me enough time to get into the garage. I was hoping they wouldn't approach the wards. My instinct was correct. They stood and snarled angrily at the doorway, at times goading me to come out. A face began to slither its way onto one of the creatures. He wore makeup that heralded back to the 80s, and he large gold rings which were pierced through his cheeks. "You fuck me, man. You fuck me. Cash money deal and you fuck me. I am going to eat your fucking heart." He screamed at me. I recognized the voice. It was none other than Mr. Ghost, I presume. I reloaded my pistol and looked around the room looking for anything Pat may have left behind to help me hurt these things. The other creature covered its raging maw with the face of a woman, also painted up like an 80s rocker. "No baby." She smiled coyly at me. "He's got a wife. And a boy too. Let's eat them." I pulled the trigger and caught her in the right cheek. I knew it wouldn't kill her, but I knew it would hurt 6 ways to Sunday. "You fucking leave them out of these, you fucking flesh-eating motherfuckers." Mr. Ghost laughed. "Oh Sandy baby. He got you good. Oh, and the word you're looking for, Mr. Alistair, is Virginia." Before he could finish, I saw a bright white flash appear behind him, and he ran, a flame out of my line of sight. Behind him was a very weak, very pale Joan who was readying another grenade of some kind. "Unless you want to know what white foes taste like, you better get put of here right now, you vampire bitch," Joan warned. She was fumbling with the pin. Sandy held her hand to the large hole my pistol had left and turned toward Joan, and launched her tongue, this time into her neck. Just before Joan faded, she had managed to pull the pin loose, and a few seconds later, the entire living room was ablaze. Sandy ran after Mr. Ghost, wherever he went, and I escaped to my vehicle. I sped away home as fast as I could. Under protest, I stuffed my wife and son into the car, and took them to one of my safe houses. My gut told me Mr. Ghost would nurse himself back to health, and come for me again. I had disappeared us once before, many years ago, when a drug cartel made some threats. We lived in the safe house for almost 3 months then. I wonder how long we will be here this time. At least now, I know what I am dealing with. Fucking vampires.